Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something important, figuring out whether seeing a therapist outside your insurance network might be the right move for you.
Yeah, we've gathered a bunch of sources, guides, articles, info from practices, and we're going to unpack it all.
Exactly. Our mission here is to pull out the key insights, the stuff you need to know to understand the upsides of going out of network, how the money side actually works, and if it could be a better path for your mental health.
It's definitely not always as simple as thinking, oh, in-network is cheaper, full stop. There's more to it.
Right. That's where we want to explore the why behind potentially choosing an out-of-network provider.
That's right. The material really makes you question the default assumption. It lays out some pretty compelling reasons why exploring ON options is worth considering for your care.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Looking at this material, what's the first major advantage they highlight for going out of network? What are those potential benefits?
Well, the first one, and it's pretty immediate, is just having more choices and access to specialized care.
Right, because if you stick with your insurance.
You're limited, right? You've got that specific list of providers who've signed on with your insurance company. It can be, well, kind of restrictive depending on your plan and where you live.
But stepping outside that list opens things up.
Massively. It just opens up this huge pool of therapists. And the sources really stress this. It's not just more names, it's the ability to find someone with a really specific skill set. Someone whose expertise lines up perfectly with what you need.
So like if you need help with something very specific, maybe an eating disorder specialist or someone who focuses on OCD or LGBTQ plus couples therapy.
Exactly. Or maybe you're looking for a therapist of color or someone who's an expert in a particular trauma therapy like EMDR or somatic work or even a specific type of CBT. Finding that niche specialist, that perfect fit for your unique needs, is just much more likely when you aren't confined to the insurance panel list.
And I see a point here too about more complex assessments,
Yeah.
like psychological testing for ADHD or learning differences.
Yeah, that's another angle. Going out of network often means the assessment can be more customized, really tailored to your questions, rather than being limited by what insurance pre-approves or how they categorize testing procedure.
Makes sense. It's about finding the right expertise. Okay, so choice and specialization is number one. What's another big plus the sources point to?
A really practical one. Improved access and actually getting seen in a timely way.
Oh yeah, wait lists.
Exactly. We all know finding an in-network therapist who actually has openings, especially in some cities, can be, well, a real challenge.
They call and they're booked solid for months.
Months, yeah. Sometimes longer. It's a huge frustration when you need support now. But out-of-network therapists, they often maintain smaller caseloads.
Okay, and that means
Potentially much shorter wait times to get that first appointment. And often more flexibility in scheduling, too, finding times that actually work for your life, not just whatever slot is left.
getting help sooner rather than later is definitely a big deal. Okay, so better access, the right expertise. What about the therapy itself? Does going ON change the actual sessions?
It can, yeah. This leads to the benefit of flexible and personalized treatment. See, insurance companies often have rules about the kind of therapy they'll cover, or for how long.
Like they might say a standard session is 55 minutes and that's it. Or you only get so many sessions for a certain diagnosis.
That's pretty common, yes. And those kinds of rules can really limit what a therapist feels they can do, but an out-of-network provider, they have more clinical freedom, meaning they can genuinely tailor the approach to you and your needs without having to constantly check if it fits into the insurance company's box or get pre-approval for every little thing.
So if you and your therapist feel you need, say, a 75-minute session sometimes, or maybe meeting twice a week during a tough patch,
That decision stays between you and your therapist. It's based on what supports your progress, not on what an insurance plan allows.
that feels important.
It really is. And it allows for creativity. Like, one source mentioned an eating disorder therapist going with a client to a grocery store. That's powerful real-world work.
Wow, yeah?
But it doesn't fit a neat insurance code, you know? So ONN allows for those kinds of personalized, sometimes out-of-the-box interventions that can make a huge difference.
Therapy designed around you, not the paperwork.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, what else comes up as a key benefit?
This is a big one for a lot of people. Enhanced privacy and confidentiality. This is really crucial to understand.
Okay.
When you use insurance for therapy, your therapist has to give sensitive information to the insurance company.
Like what sort of info?
A diagnosis, for sure. often updates on your progress, sometimes even session notes. They need this to process the claim and pay.
And that info becomes part of your official medical record.
It does. And, the sources raise concerns about that. Who sees it? Strangers at the insurance company essentially reviewing personal details. And there's the potential long-term aspect. Could having certain diagnoses on your record affect things like life insurance applications or maybe some specific job screenings down the road?
That's something to think about. So with private pay, that info stays put.
Right. It stays confidential between you and your therapist. Your records are private. And importantly, a formal mental health diagnosis isn't automatically required just to get therapy.
So you don't necessarily need a label on your file.
Not unless you and your therapist decide it's clinically needed and helpful for you. This is a big deal if you're seeking therapy for personal growth or relationship issues, or just navigating life changes where a formal diagnosis might not even be appropriate, but insurance often requires one for medical necessity.
There's an ethical piece here too, isn't there? Mentioned in the material.
Yes, exactly. The pressure to assign a diagnosis just to meet insurance requirements can put therapists in a tricky ethical spot. Private pay avoids that pressure entirely. The focus stays purely on your needs and ethical clinical practice. That feels like a significant difference, keeping control of your information and ensuring the focus is purely clinical. Okay, one last benefit area. Does this impact the actual quality of care?
It certainly can, yeah. Several sources connect OON to the potential for higher quality of care. Remember the smaller caseloads we talked about.
Yeah.
Therapists who aren't juggling massive numbers of clients, often driven by lower insurance reimbursement rates, simply have more bandwidth, more time and mental energy to prepare for your sessions, reflect on your work together, coordinate care if needed.
They're less likely to be burned out, maybe. More present.
Exactly. That presence and engagement makes a difference. And it links back to the ethics piece, too. They're free to recommend the absolute best treatment approach for you, based on their judgment, not constrained by what insurance will or won't cover in terms of duration or type of therapy.
And we know that finding a therapist you really click with that good fit is super important for therapy to work well.
Absolutely. Research consistently shows the therapeutic relationship itself is one of the strongest predictors of positive outcomes. Going out of network gives you the freedom to prioritize finding that right person for you, someone you truly connect with and trust.
Instead of just picking from the limited insurance list.
Right. The material frames it as an investment in the effectiveness of your therapy. Finding that great fit, getting personalized care, it might lead to more meaningful progress, maybe even in fewer sessions overall.
So while it might cost more upfront per session, the idea is you could get more value, more effective help, potentially saving time and emotional energy in the long run compared to sticking with someone who isn't quite the right fit just because they're in network.
That's the core argument, yes. Focusing on the quality and the fit for potentially better, more lasting results.
Okay, those are definitely strong points in favor of considering OPN. But let's tackle the big question for most people, the money, the financial side. How does it actually work? And, can you make it affordable?
Yeah, cost is obviously a huge factor. And typically, yes, you pay more upfront when you go out of network. But here's the key thing the sources emphasize. Many insurance plans offer out-of-network OON reimbursement.
Okay, so you might get some money back from your insurance.
You might, yes. It's pretty common with PPO plans, also POS plans. Less common, or sometimes non-existent, with HMOs or some of the newer marketplace plans, so you definitely have to check your specific plan.
So how does that reimbursement process actually happen? Walk us through it.
Okay, so typically you pay your therapist their full fee directly, usually at each session or maybe monthly.
Right.
Then your therapist gives you a special kind of receipt called a superbill.
Superbill, got it.
It's basically a detailed invoice with all the specific information your insurance company needs, dates you were seen, the service codes like CPT codes for the type of session, a diagnosis code if one applies, how much you paid, etc. You then take that superbill and submit it to your insurance company, usually through their website or maybe by mail. If you have OM benefits and meet the requirements, they process it like any other claim and send you a check for whatever portion they cover.
Okay. So the money flow is different. You pay the therapist first, then insurance pays you back later. Now, the material stress is there. There's some key terms you absolutely have to understand when you call your insurance company about this.
Yes, definitely. These are critical. First up is your out-of-network deductible.
Okay. What's that?
That's the amount of money you have to pay out of pocket for any out-of-network services, not just therapy in a plan year before your insurance starts paying anything back.
And these can be high, right?
They often are, yeah. Significantly higher than your in-network deductible sometimes. The sources mention ranges like, $5,000, $10,000, even up to $20,000 in some cases. The therapy alone might not hit those highest numbers for everyone.
Wow. Okay, so you have to meet that first. Then what?
Then your coinsurance kicks in. Coinsurance is the percentage of the cost you still pay after you've met that deductible. For OI and mental health, this is often somewhere between 20% and 50%.
So if your coinsurance is, say, 40%,
Mhm.
insurance pays 60% after the deductible is met.
Correct. But here's where it gets a little complicated, and the sources really flag this part. Insurance pays a percentage of something called the allowed amount.
Allowed amount. Okay, break that down. That sounds important.
It is super important and often kind of hidden. The allowed amount, sometimes called the usual, customary, and reasonable, or UCR rate, is the maximum price that your insurance company decides is reasonable for that specific therapy service, like a 55-minute session, code 90837, in your specific geographic area.
So they decide what's reasonable, not the therapist.
Exactly. And your coinsurance percentage. It applies to that allowed amount, not necessarily to what your therapist actually charges you.
Okay, let's use the example they gave to make sure I get this. Therapist charges $150. Insurance decides the allowed amount for that service code in that zip code is only, say, $66, and your coinsurance is 50%.
Right. So you might think you'll get a 50% of $150 back, which is $75.
Yeah.
But you don't. You get 50% of the allowed amount, the $66. So you only get $33 back from insurance.
Whoa. Okay, so I paid $150, hoping for $75 back, but only got $33, meaning I'm actually out $117 for that session.
Precisely. And that difference, the gap between the therapist's full fee and what insurance ultimately covers, which includes the part they deem over the allowed amount, plus your coinsurance portion of the allowed amount, that's your responsibility.
Is there a term for that difference?
Yeah, it's sometimes called balance billing. Out-of-network therapists can bill you for that remaining balance because they don't have a contract with the insurance company preventing them from doing so, unlike in-network providers.
Okay, understanding that allowed amount is clearly vital for budgeting, realistically. Is there any cap on how much you might pay out of pocket in a year?
Usually, yes. Most plans have an out-of-pocket maximum. Once your spending on deductibles, coinsurance, and copays hits that maximum limit for the plan year, your insurance should start covering 100% of allowed amounts for covered services.
Okay.
But, and this is a big but flagged in the material, your O&N out-of-pocket max might be much higher than your in-network one. And some plans might even have no out-of-pocket maximum specifically for out-of-network services. That's a huge financial risk you need to clarify.
Definitely. Okay, this sounds like a lot to figure out, but it seems like there are concrete steps. What's the absolute first thing someone should do?
Call your insurance company. Use the member services number on the back of your card. Do this before you commit to seeing an O&N therapist.
And what specific questions should you ask them?
You need to ask, do I have out-of-network benefits for outpatient mental health? Specifically, therapy sessions. What is my out-of-network deductible? How much of it have I already met this year? What is my out-of-network coinsurance percentage? Do I need a pre-authorization or referral? And what's the process for submitting claims? How do I get that superbill to you?
Okay.
And importantly, you should try to ask about the allowed amount or UCR rate for common therapy codes like 90834 or 90837 in your area. They might not tell you easily, but it's worth asking to get a sense of potential reimbursement.
That phone call sounds absolutely essential to get a clear picture. Now, say you've done that, you understand the costs, and you decide to go ahead. Are there things that can help manage the process?
Yes, definitely. First, your therapist provides those superbills, usually monthly. That's your key document.
And submitting the claims.
Usually that falls on you. But some therapists or practices might offer courtesy billing as a service. And the material also mentions apps and services like Reimbursify that exist specifically to help you submit those superbills easily, often for a small fee per claim or subscription.
That could be helpful if the paperwork seems intimidating. What about using tax-advantaged accounts?
Big help there. HSA, Health Savings Account, or FSA, Flexible Spending Account, funds can absolutely be used to pay for therapy, including O&M therapy sessions and deductibles.
How does that help?
You're paying with pre-tax dollars. So depending on your income tax bracket, it's like getting an immediate discount of, say, 20, 30, maybe even 40% on the cost. It effectively lowers your out-of-pocket expense.
That's a great tip. And is it okay to actually talk about the fees with the therapist?
Absolutely. The sources encourage open communication.
Oh.
While not universal, some O&M therapists might offer a limited number of sliding scale slots based on financial need, or perhaps discuss payment plans, especially if you're transitioning care. It's always worth asking, respectfully.
Good to know.
Just remember, if you do negotiate a lower fee, the superbill needs to reflect the amount you actually paid. You can only seek reimbursement for what you were charged.
Right, that makes sense. So it really comes back to that idea of seeing it as an investment, potentially.
It does. The perspective offered is that investing the time to understand ON benefits and potentially paying more per session for the right therapist, personalized care, and better privacy can lead to more effective therapy overall, which in the long run might be a better use of your resources, time, money, and emotional energy than sticking with a less than ideal fit just because it's in network.
This has been incredibly helpful in breaking down the benefits and the sometimes confusing financial side of ON therapy. Now let's make this even more concrete by talking about a specific practice the material highlights. Edward Jenny and Associates. They actually made the switch to being an exclusively private pay practice.
That's right. Edward Jenny and Associates, they do online therapy across Pennsylvania and also have an office for in-person work in West Grove, PA. They transitioned fully to a private K model. And what's interesting is their stated reasons for doing so line up perfectly with the core benefits of O&M care we've just been discussing.
Okay, so why did they make that move, according to their materials?
Their main drivers were really about maximizing treatment control for their clients, safeguarding privacy, and being able to offer specialized cutting-edge services, particularly something they call collaborative assessment.
Okay, let's unpack those.
Yeah.
How does being private pay help them maximize treatment control?
They explicitly state that working within insurance panels often ties their hands, limiting their ability to use the evidence-based approaches they feel are best, or adjust session length or frequency based purely on clinical need.
No.
Going private pay gives them full autonomy to make treatment decisions collaboratively with you, the client, based on what will be most effective, without needing an insurance company's sign-off. They talk about prioritizing clinical integrity.
And the privacy piece we discussed earlier.
That was a huge factor for them, too. They echo the concerns about sharing diagnoses and sensitive progress information with insurance companies, information that becomes part of your permanent record.
Right.
They feel the private pay model offers superior confidentiality, keeping your details just between you and your therapist, and giving you more agency over your own health information and diagnoses.
Makes sense. Now, what about this specific service collaborative assessment? You said that was a key reason, too.
Yes, this seems to be a really unique offering for their practice, and they state clearly that this kind of in-depth assessment just doesn't fit the standard insurance model.
Why not? What makes collaborative assessment different?
Well, the way they describe it, collaborative assessment isn't just about assigning a diagnosis. It's a much deeper, more involved process. It uses validated psychological tests, but the key is the collaboration.
How so?
You actively work with the psychologist to define the questions you want answered about yourself. You discuss the test results together. You work together to build a richer understanding and a more balanced self-narrative. It's described as transformative, focused on deep insight.
So it's more about self-discovery and understanding, not just fitting symptoms into a diagnostic box for billing purposes.
Exactly. That focus on insight, nuance, and collaborative meaning-making doesn't align well with the medical necessity, procedure code-driven world of insurance billing. So being private pay allows them the freedom to offer this unique, intensive service.
Gotcha. And what are their general services and fees mentioned?
They offer individual therapy and couples therapy, both listed as starting at $200 per session, and then this collaborative assessment process, which is described as a multi-session engagement, typically costing between $3,000 and $4,000 total.
Okay, so if someone is interested in their practice, given that it's private pay, how do they help clients handle the financial side, like the OGO reimbursement we talked about?
They seem very aware that navigating O&N can feel complex, and their materials show they've put supports in place specifically for this.
Like providing the superbills?
Yes, definitely. They provide the super bills you need to submit your claims, but they also go further. They've partnered with a service called Mentaya.
Mentaya?
Yeah, it has an online tool, like a calculator, right on their website, I believe, that helps potential clients instantly check their specific OON benefits and estimate reimbursement.
Oh, that's handy.
It really is. And here's a big one. They explicitly state they offer courtesy billing services, meaning if you want them to, they can actually submit the ON claims directly to your insurance for you.
Wow. Okay, so they handle the paperwork submission. That takes a lot of the burden off the client.
It definitely simplifies things.
Hmm.
They also make sure to mention, of course, that therapy costs are generally eligible for HSA and FSA reimbursement, reminding people about that pre-tax savings option.
Any mention of sliding scale?
They do note that as part of their commitment to continuity of care during their transition, a limited number of sliding scale spots might be available for existing clients who demonstrate financial need. It doesn't sound like it's broadly available for new clients, but they seem mindful of transitions.
It sounds like they're quite proactive in helping clients understand and manage the private pay system.
Yeah, they emphasize transparency, having an open door for questions, and making sure clients understand the process. They also stress their ethical commitment. If their practice isn't the right fit, financially or otherwise, they'll help facilitate referrals to other providers.
So choosing a practice like Edward Jenny and Associates, operating this way, is presented as a conscious choice about what you prioritize in therapy.
Exactly. The framing is you're choosing maximum control over treatment decisions, enhanced privacy, access to specialized services like their collaborative assessment, and working with a practice structured around those values. It's positioned as an investment in a particular quality and depth of care.
If someone listening thinks this approach, or maybe Edward Jenny and Associates specifically, sounds like it might be right for them, what should they do next based on the info?
The clear call to action is to reach out for a free consultation. It's a chance to talk about your needs, ask questions, and see if it feels like a good match.
And how do they do that?
You can call them at 610-444-6089 or visit their website, which is inkblotdoc.com, inkblotdoc, all one word, .oa.com. You can request an appointment or that free consultation right there online.
And just to reiterate where they serve.
They offer in-person therapy in West Grove, Pennsylvania, which is in southern Chester County, and they provide telehealth video sessions across the entire state of Pennsylvania.
Okay, this deep dive has really shed light on the fact that while using in-network insurance for therapy works for many, it's definitely not the only option. Understanding the potential upsides of going out of network, like wider choice, specialized care, personalized treatment, and especially that enhanced privacy, really opens up possibilities.
Absolutely. And hopefully demystifying the financial side, understanding OLM benefits, deductibles, allowed amounts, superbills, HSAs makes it feel more navigable. It takes some homework, but it's often manageable.
Right, and seeing how a practice like Edward Jenny and Associates operates and the support they offer, like courtesy billing, shows that therapists choosing this model are often set up to help clients make it work.
It provides a concrete example of why a practice might choose this path and how they support clients within it. It connects the dots between the benefits and the practicalities.
It reinforces that idea of investing in the right fit and quality care, potentially leading to more effective outcomes.
Which could be more efficient in the long run.
So as we wrap up, maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. What could truly personalized, deeply confidential mental health care, designed entirely around your unique needs and goals, free from outside constraints? What could that mean for your journey towards well-being?
And is exploring that level of investment in yourself something worth looking into further? Definitely something to think about.